Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of JDM Masters, and on today's car reviews...
Captain, isn't that the wrong jacket?
Oh yeah, you're right. Okay, Honda jacket, it's also red, check. So on today's car reviews we have the Honda Civic Type R EK9, but it's not just any normal Civic Type R. It is Spoon Type 1's refresh car, which has a lot of parts and it's been restored to like the demo car that you guys have seen in popular media quite a while back. We're going to be talking about it, having a review, so come join us. So this is the Honda Civic Type R, known as the EK9 model. The EK9 is special for the Type R model. The base of this, the SIR, is known as the EK4. This is the 6th generation Honda Civic, but it is the first generation of the Civic Type R. The first R came out with the NSX Type R, the NA1 in 1992, and the second, more road-going, more affordable model was released in 1995 with the DC2, and finally the third model to get the Type R treatment with the EK9 in 1997. This is actually the Koki or facelift model. As you can see, the differences in the shape of the headlights and also the front bumper. Interior is also a bit different. Spoon has purchased a used car, good quality, with no body damage, and actually it restored this to as good as a new car. And furthermore, mechanically, we're going to be talking about a little bit about the history of this model and also what Spoon has done. So let's have a look. The 6th generation Honda Civic, known as the EK, had several body styles. Mainly, it was a 4-door called the Ferrio in Japan, the 3-door hatchback, as you can see here. And also in America, they had the coupe version. A lot of you American fans will probably know that as the SI coupe, but only the 3-door hatchback was available in the Type R trim. And this was a true JDM model. There were about 12,000 of these produced from 1997 to 2000, and they were only available in Japan. A lot of these have found their way into right-hand drive countries like Australia and Hong Kong, and also the UK, Ireland, or wherever there's right-hand drive. But very soon it will be available for import into America following the 25-year rule. And it's highly sought after modifications. Even back then in the early 2000s, many people attempted to do the exterior by replacing the headlights, putting various parts like the rear wing, even changing to the 5-lug wheels and painting it in championship white, which is only available with all the Type R models, to make it look like this. But is it really the same car? The answer is no. Let's first of all start with why the EK9 is only for the Type R. It's only for the Civic. Interestingly, the DC2, there were 2 versions, the normal SIR with the non-Type R engine, and also the Type R was called a DC2. The B16B engine is very different from the engine that it's based on, the B16A, which is available on the SI and the SIR model. B16B had a high block, which is taken from the Integra Type R's 1.8-litre B18C, and then sort of de-stroked with longer con rods to make it 1.6 litres. The reason for doing this is having longer con rods with the same stroke actually makes it smoother, less vibrations. Rev capability of this engine can actually go up to about 9,000, although from the factory it's set at about 8,600, which is more than enough. A lot of the power appears in the last 2,000 RPM. But with the factory exhaust manifold and the whole exhaust system, the intakes, also very different from the SIR model. So a lot of these changes make this engine really bespoke. It's also the last version of the B series engines before Honda switched over to the K20A in the DC5 and the EP3. So we're going to be talking a little bit about the technical specifications of the stock car before moving on to why Spoon has chosen to keep more or less the same specs but with an improvement using their parts. So let's have a look at the engine. Of course, this is the Spoon carbon fiber bonnet, which is, well, very light, 10 kilograms lighter than the stock metal full iron one. In fact, very, very light. Can lift it with one finger, but it's not as light as some other manufacturers' ones, like maybe like a Various. And the reason is it's been constructed with enough rigidity. As you can see here, the top is carbon fiber, but the underside, the ribs, is following the design of the original stock piece, and it's FRP. This is light enough to make an impact on the weight over the front wheels, but it doesn't really need any bonnet pins, so you can still use this and it'll appear like a normal car. In fact, for those who don't want that carbon fiber looks, you can actually paint it to the body color, which is what I would do with the thing. So here we have the yellow head, the B16B engine. You can see here DOHC VTEC, which was quite a big thing. In the 90s, it was a thing to put all these technical specs of the car, the 16 valve, 20 valve, DOHC, and of course VTEC. And what is VTEC? Let's explain once more again. Variable valve timing and lift electronic control. This was a revolutionary cam switching technology that Honda patented, coming up with the first DA6 Integra XSI in Japan, followed by the EF9, and then also they used it on the C30A in the NSX. The B16B is the last iteration of the older school VTEC engines before the switch over to the iVTEC with the DC5. Users and fans have commented at how the older B series engines, as also the H engines, not forgetting the very, very good F20C in the S2000, because it doesn't have variable cam phasing on the intake shaft. It's just a really on-off kind of Dr. Jekyll and Hyde kind of feel. It just has linear torque, and after 6,000 or so RPM, it switches to the high cams, and there's just a huge rush of power and just sort of VTEC kicked in yo, as a lot of fans would like to say. But it's not really VTEC kicked in, it's more of a switching from the low cam profile to the high cam profile. Now what actually this entails is that the intake and exhaust valves lift is longer, the duration is longer, to allow more valve overlap. And that's very important because we want the intake air to be overlapped slightly with the exhaust coming in. And those who know about NA engines, the only way to produce more power is to rev higher and breathe smoother. Now with normal engines, the higher revolutions you go, all the valve train and everything's all moving really, really fast. If the cam timing and therefore the valve movement and duration stays the same, you can't put in a lot of air. It's like an athlete, if you're running and you want to increase your pace, to get more air into your body and to create more mechanical or physical power, you need to enlarge maybe your lungs. So this is essentially what the VTEC system allows. It's created first as a very high revving, a high powered NA engine, and then VTEC mechanism actually helps to give more drivability at low speeds by having a lower cam profile with better fuel economy, so you get a good mix of mid-range torque and also high-end power. Now, realistically on the circuit, this helps a lot because if you're downshifting from third to second, or maybe from high gear into a low speed corner, the revs do drop maybe below 5,000 RPM. If there was no VTEC, you'll have to keep the gear ratio very short. It actually helps to give some mid-range punch, and then getting out of the corner with some power. You can see in some reference photos here how that's actually very useful. On the EF9 race car, this created a huge advantage with the VTEC engine versus the ZC non-VTEC by having a bit of a mid-range torque. So in real life, in the real world, it does actually help quite a lot. Most of the driving you can do around town without actually going past 6,000 RPM. With the tuning done just by bolt-on mods, we have the exhaust manifold and also the exhaust muffler and a bit of intake mods, combined with the very lightweight car, just a little bit past 1,000 kilograms. Well, this is very true for even the DC2 and the EG6 and EK4. You don't need a lot of weight to move the car a lot. So let's talk about the engine tuning that this has been done. Just because you can see here, everything is really clean. The body has been repainted and removed of rust. It looks like almost like a show car. Every part possible has been changed to new. For example, all the hoses, the washer cap here, some little brackets, even the nuts and the bolts, these brackets, power steering, pump fluid, the cable, and every part has been cleaned up or replaced with new OEM parts which are still available. Yellow valve head cover without the crinkle is an iconic spoon color. Now this engine is not new, it's been overhauled, and starting with 180,000 kilometers. Now, most Honda engines can last way past 200, even to 300,000 with proper maintenance, good oil, It's built a bit different from other makers' engines, but it's high tolerances of parts and accuracy in construction and design. It still creates a lot of power, but then why go further and rebuild an engine if it still works? And the reason is, what is actually a spoon engine? Those of you who watch Fast and Furious may know Hector's got 3 spoon engines. Does it make that much power? The answer is, back in the 90s, Spoon did experiment with several types of tunes. 1.6 with a stroker kit to 1.8, which essentially makes it the same as a B18C, giving it about 200 over horsepower, and another kit which is actually a B20 sort of swap with crankshaft and the con rods to make it a 2-liter with a lot of high power, 240 at least. The stock B16B on catalog produces 185 PS, Japanese horsepower, and the rebuilt engine has no more than that. So what's the point? Now, let's go into engine building. The original factory Type R engine from C30A in the NSXR and also the B18C of the DC2 was hand assembled from the factory. In fact, the valve head intake ports were polished and smoothened by skilled technicians in the factory. And also this created a machine to actually replicate this smoothening. And those who know well engine engineering will know that making the ports smoother increases airflow, which matches with what is actually a racing engine. So basically Honda built the design of the B16 and B18 very much like a racing engine, constructed with all of the parts, pistons, con rods, valve springs, any component that multiple pieces to be weight balanced within very close tolerances of each other. Now, according to Jomoto-san from Spoon, he says that Honda already matches the weight of their components down to maybe 1/10. And so Spoon goes further, very much like a racing engine or even an F1, to 1/100 of a gram. The differences means that every part that moves becomes much smoother, which increases reliability and longevity. But this is basically the same as a racing engine. So this translates into a very reliable engine that can be used throughout its rev range, and you can use all of the power on the circuit. You will be safe with the fact that it won't actually break. Now, already the stock Honda Type R engine has a very high tolerance capability, but having it more finely tuned and balanced Spoon engine, this is what it's all about. It's done in the Type 1 workshop by their very experienced and skilled technician who assembles each part meticulously and slowly. And the most difficult components to assemble in a Honda engine, especially with the VTEC, is the complicated valve train. It has several rocker arms and also the solenoid, and runs by oil pressure to do the switching mechanism. There's a lot of complicated parts. This actually makes it a little bit heavy compared to non-VTEC engines, but in total, it's actually quite light. Now, Honda's designed the car without fancy components like aluminium or carbon fiber. This is steel originally, also the bonnet was also steel. Now, changed to carbon fiber with other lightened parts, which includes, as you can see here, the stainless steel exhaust manifold, very beautiful in bronze color. This actually cuts weight by about 5 kilograms. So 10 kilograms from the bonnet, 5 kilograms over there. The B pipe also cuts about 3 kilograms. The center pipe, the muffler cuts about another 3 kilograms. And over here, we have the carbon Kevlar direct intake pipe, which cuts about maybe 1.5 kilograms, removing the resonator, and it creates a more direct intake flow. So it looks like very much a normal stock engine. Other parts include the increased capacity radiator, which is half size for the EG and the EK. Interesting that all it needs is a 1.6, but it's been cleaned up. You've got the SCP, the silicone hoses here, of course with a nice logo, must have, for bling bling. And interestingly here, the cable plug cords have an extra earthing wire, which increases the arm resistance. And over here we have the strut tower bar, which is not mounted on the original upper wishbone mounts over here, but because the suspension is a lot stiffer, 18 kilograms in the front, 16 kilograms in the rear, mounting it directly on the strut towers makes it a bit more responsive. Also in the rear, there is another bar. And also in here, we have the air intake, which is just a replacement filter. Nothing fancy, no open pot filters. This is a higher flow air filter, which works best with stock cars and also for street running. It increases fuel economy, which is better because open pop filters do get dirty and it's not really worth it. There's a lot of misconception of having open air filter increases more power. Yes, at the top end, if you're a race car, but in daily driving, you need the box, the resonator box, and the filtering capabilities, which is very important in order to get fuel economy and also to give it more torque. So, everything's also been cleaned. The gearbox is standard with the standard ratios 4.4 final drive, which is the same as the EK4. The DC298 version had a higher 4.8 final drive. This is still a very good match for the winding roads of Japan and also on the streets. It's an option to change it, but they chose to keep it stock to keep the original specs of the helical LSD, which is strong enough, not necessary for a clutch plate. The whole concept is to keep this still improved tuned road car. Now, there's a lot of misconception probably about what tuning is. Let's talk a little bit about tuning. Now, the first objective was to demonstrate that restoring a very popular classic like the Civic Type R is possible in today's age. It doesn't necessarily have to be Type R model. Type 1 is trying to demonstrate that if you have the right thinking about buying an old car and restoring it first to its original condition. Now, of course, many things like the bushings, for example, even if the car has low mileage, it is going to be all cracked up and needs to be replaced. Driving in an old bushings like my own Civic Type R, actually, I could feel the immediate difference with everything being restored in this car, how responsive and stable it feels, especially on the corner turn in, and just reactive when you're doing lane change, accelerating out of the corner, on an uphill from the track. Restoring it to the original condition allows you to enjoy the car as it came up from the factory. A lot of these 90s cars have a lot of R&D money put into it, and it should feel very fantastic. Those of you who play Gran Turismo will probably understand the feeling that the cars are, are really sharp and they handle very well. But then coming into the used car section, you buy one which has even, not so high mileage, and it gets a bit disappointing. It's because the car isn't brand new. The next will be to restore minor components for reliability, electronic parts, sensors, cleaning up everything. That's also a last thing just for looks. And finally, the gearbox and engine, good oil. But this is a clear example of what a new car should feel like, plus their own parts into it. So let's have a look also in the rear where there are changes. So the rear section, up here we have the carbon fiber rear wing, which interestingly was designed originally for the SIR EK4. The EK9 had a more aggressive looking wing with a slat inside for more downforce, and also had slats on the side here. But the spoon design is clean, which is a bit more for high speed, and it's just carbon fiber, of course, it's lighter. Big spoon sticker behind always adorns their demo cars. But what's the point we want to look at is the muffler over here. There are two types of mufflers from the spoon catalog, the street type and the N1 type, which is lighter and smaller, more like a can. That's based on their N1 Endurance Super Taikyu racing model, which is a bit too loud for street use. In fact, it doesn't pass the MOT or the Japanese shaken, it needs a little bung. So they've chosen the street version, which is right at the limit for decibel noise levels, but is wider in diameter, not by that much, but enough to give enough flow for up to maybe 200 horsepower combined with the exhaust manifold and the B section center pipe. So it also looks very much like the stock one, which I feel that the stock one already has a very good sound, but this gives it a more lower, gruffy note. Let's check it. So, Type R has the Type R engine, as explained earlier, like a racing engine with balanced parts, even from the factory. The spoon version is even more finely tuned and balanced with the parts that have already been increased in capacity from the factory. What really differentiates the normal standard EK hatchback body from the Type R is the body itself. From the EK4 to the low-end models, they're all basically identical. The EK9 or the Type R model, very much like the DC2, and in fact any Type R or Euro R models in the Honda range Now Honda's gone a step further compared to other manufacturers like Mitsubishi, which does for their Lancer Evolution, more spot welding around the door opening area and increasing certain parts as well. The thickness of key areas like the strut tower mounts and also the rear tailgate. So let's have a look at this. The all-important big enclosure of the hatchback, which has an open area. You can see here the rear strut bar, which gives high stability to the rear side as well. This is very important for a high performance car. More rigidity basically increases the response and handling of any sports car. And so this is something done especially for the Type R models. And you can see here in the chart all the little areas that have been improved in rigidity. The thickness of certain parts of the rear hatch has been increased from the factory, from the stamping procedure. And other things like the rear lower arm bar with brackets welded in has been added, and spot welding done to certain key areas and the gusset points in the floor, which is the most important part of the body rigidity increase. This cannot be replicated with a non-Type R model. So that's what makes Type R cars, the body is the most important component. So using this as a strong base, it can handle very well even with increased rubber bushings, which is what the spoon ones are. It's 15% more stiffer than the already stiff Type R bushings, but it doesn't give any vibration feelings compared to maybe more hardcore ones like the N1 versions of Mugen. It's a sort of a good balance between very sharp sports driving. Think of this as like a Porsche 911 GT3, which is equivalent to the normal factory Type R, and the RS, GT3 RS. This is what the spoon version is. So for any of you who want to do car restoration, whether you have a real Type R EK9 model or DC2, or even if you have lower end models, putting these parts that are available from their catalog, refreshing the car in the right way to bring it back to the original condition, and then putting the parts or selected parts of any manufacturer you want will give a better performance and you can enjoy. It's not about having a lot of power, it's about selecting the best balance between parts, and a lot of this comes from careful selection of chassis parts. The bushing is where you should start, because this will actually give any kind of feedback from stiffer springs or dampers in the settings, and even alignments, more accuracy, and you can really feel it through the steering. So we're going to go for a short drive and I'll give you some impressions of it. That's the kind of response you want. That's the kind of response you want from a lightweight body combined with a very sharp, high revving NA engine, and perhaps in the JDM world, in the 1.6 litre NA class, probably nothing can really match the Honda B16A and B16B. Combined with just, you know, the double wishbone suspension and the restored bushings, it really feels like more like a new car and beyond. I tested the EK9 and the DC2 when it was new in the late 90s. This feels very much like that as far as my memory serves me. Compared to my own car, which needs new parts, it just feels 30%, 40% better. Sound, of course, is a little gruffier with the street exhaust. It's not too loud, not too intrusive, and this is just still very livable on an everyday basis compared to the N1 exhaust or any loud, straight through cat delete. You don't need that, because that can still, you know, intrude into, you know, just, you know, trotting the car around, and you want to disturb your neighbors, which is a very mature thing to do when you own one of these sports cars. It kind of has like a bad Lloyd racing image, but this is a more mature take on it. Enjoying the car as it is designed from the factory. We've got an open road out here. You can just, you know, open it up without fear of losing the license, because it doesn't really go into the high speed range, but you can enjoy all that response in the cornering as you turn the steering wheel, and the bushes and the suspension feels very, very tight. And even though the response is maybe a little bit slower than the newer cars, which has the McPherson strut giving a more direct feel, but the linearity of the double wishbone suspension allows it to track through the corner very, very confidently as you're putting power through the front wheels.
back then, it is said also by journalists that for a normal front-wheel drive car, you don't really need more than 200 to 220 horsepower. Anything more than that will just be too overpowering. So while Honda and Renault has done a very good job with the current crop of front-wheel drive cars, putting 280 or 300 more horsepower on the front wheels with this wide stance, it lacks that lightweight feel and the compactness of all the 90s cars like this. Listen to that, it's just fantastic. You really feel like you're driving a race car. The Group A cars of the 1980s would probably be on the same level, cannot outperform late 90s Civic Type R and the Integra Type R. Ichishima-san has mentioned in a previous video created back then that these 1.6 liter cars were at the same level as the race cars back from 10 years ago, which is something that's absent today from the current crop of 1.6 liters. Everything's turbocharged now, but having a very highly tuned engine from the factory that is meant to interpret racing sort of feel and bring it onto the street. There's not many cars that can actually do that. Homologation specials like the Lancer Evolution, the STI, very much rally cars, but a race car on the street, there are not many manufacturers in this class who could do it. Now, of course, that's one reason why prices are very, very high. As I explained earlier, the Type R body really makes the difference in its rarity, but also just that feel from Hondas at that age. It's just not possible anymore. And the last NA engine VTEC car was the FN and F2 Civic Type R, but even that had a slightly different feel. It was heavier and bigger, but the formula was the same. And there's just something special about driving one of these things, knowing that it's 15% better than a new car, it exceeds the new car's performance. It's just really, really fun. It's such a pleasure to actually drive one of these.
So after that long test drive, finally brought the car back to Type 1. Wow.
Did you enjoy it?
Yes.
Oh, that's good.
Really, really enjoyed it.
Oh.
I mean, it's basically a new car
Yeah.
and more, like you
uh,
said.
Yeah, because renovation car.
Yes. So it's interesting
Yeah.
you use the word renovation. This is kind of Japanese English.
Yes.
But I think after thinking about it, after driving the car, I feel it's a perfect word.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
I mean, we have fans out there who have 20-year-old 90s cars. I said to the viewers, it's okay, it's not a Type R. Maybe people in Europe or in Asia, they have the EK4,
Yeah.
EG6, or maybe EK3. But they love these cars. They want to restore. And I think Type 1 and Spoon makes a very, very good example.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, if you get your car done at Type 1, it's, for me and maybe a lot of viewers who love JDM tuning and Spoon, it's the finest, tuning thing. But maybe 80% or 90% is possible.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
What's the method?
We did only change the parts, but we check all condition.
Right.
Good condition don't change,
I see.
and if it has damage, we will change or repair. So we have some experience, so we can judge the good or bad.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, this is not the first renovation car that Type 1 has done. In fact, if you check on their website and the blog, of course it's all in Japanese, but you can just click on the word renovation car. You will see many different cars. In fact, we did a review of a Honda Accord CL7 Euro R in a previous episode, and that was also a renovation car.
Yeah.
But this is special for me because, the EK9 Civic Type R is a legend and you have the full rebuild engine. Oh man. So I'm gonna make my car like this. Possible?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So guys, let us know in the comments if you like to see my car restored to the same condition as this, and if you'd like me to document the process. And I really enjoyed it. It's one of the cars I really enjoy a lot. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
By the way, can we try the FK8 next time?
Oh, of course.
So let us know in the comments if you'd like to see the Spoon FK with 400 horsepower?
Yes.
400.
Yes.
Okay, so that's great. Thanks for watching, and let us know in the comments what other Spoon or Honda or maybe just JDM stuff that you'd like us to talk about. And see you next time. Peace out.
Always can be, always can be, and it's can be so good,